I didn't expect a marriage fight to sound like a verdict. Kathy shouted at me in our kitchen, "Apologize to my son right now, or we're getting a divorce." I stood up, I looked her in the eye. She smirked like she'd already won. I said 3 quiet words, then I walked away. She thought it was over. She thought she'd broken me. 3 days later, she and her son were at my door, begging. What they said next changed everything. You're about to hear why, and what I did after those 3 words. My name is Kevin, I'm 50. I live in Houston. The city hums outside my windows. You can hear tires on asphalt. You can smell barbecue and warm concrete after rain. Our block knows everyone. Neighbors wave. Church bells on Sundays. Kids play double dutch on the sidewalk. That's the rhythm I grew up with. That's the rhythm I wanted at home. Kathy and I built our life slowly. We had a small yard with a big oak. The porch light stayed on most nights. We kept the same couch for years. The living room smelled like coffee and cedar. We had a ritual. Saturday mornings, eggs, the paper, soft gospel on the radio. On Sundays, we dressed up and sat in the third row at the church. On Wednesdays, she cooked for Bible study. Our house was steady. I work out early. I keep my body and my mind sharp. I'm tall, I move calm. Kathy is 43, she likes bright dresses. She keeps her hair long and rich. She smiles easy. We held a long marriage. People in the neighborhood called us solid. Family dinners had laughter. Her sister joked loud. My cousin brought collard greens. The kids from down the street treated our house like a safe place. That's what mattered. At night our room was quiet. A ceiling fan spun slow. The light was soft. Kathy read at the edge of the bed. Sometimes I traced lines on my palms and thought about the next day. We had small fights. We always fixed them. We said sorry. We forgave. Love felt like a bank. We stored trust like money. But trust is fragile. It breaks in small sounds. A different laugh. A phone kept face down. A new perfume on a coffee cup. The first time I noticed the shift, it was tiny. I shrugged it off. I told myself I was tired. That night when Kathy yelled at me in the kitchen in front of her son, the house shook in a way I didn't expect. The oak outside stood still. Inside, something had moved. I didn't know how close we were to the edge. At first, the changes were small. They were easy to miss if you weren't watching for them. Kathy started coming home late, not an hour late, several hours late. She said work. She said errands. She said friends. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Saying she was fine felt safer than asking too many questions. Her laugh changed. It was lighter, a little secretive. Her texts buzzed at odd hours. She kept her phone face down on the table. When she walked into a room, she would check it like someone expecting a message. When I asked who she was texting, she would smile and say, "No one. It's nothing." Her lips would press together in a way I didn't like. One night she came home smelling like a perfume I didn't recognize. I stood in the doorway with my keys in my hand. She hugged me. Her embrace was warm. Her eyes darted away. I felt my chest pinch. I reached out to touch the back of her head. Her hair was soft, but her hand tightened on my arm like she was holding a secret. "You tired, Kev?" she asked. Her voice had a new rhythm. "Just the city," I lied. "Long day." She kissed my cheek. It was quick. Then she walked to the sink and rinsed her cup. The clink of porcelain sounded too loud. I noticed lipstick on the rim. It wasn't hers. My mouth went dry. Small things started to pile up. A bar receipt in her purse with a late time. A receipt for a hotel room canceled in a rush. A jacket in the back of the car I didn't recognize. Her son started to act different too. He was a teenager with moods already. But he began to avoid me. He rolled his eyes when I tried to joke. He clammed up at dinner. Once he left the table and slammed the bedroom door so hard the whole house shook. I asked Kathy quiet questions. I tried to lead gentle. "You good?" I would say while washing dishes. She would look at me like I was being dramatic. "I'm fine, Kevin," she would say, voice flat. "Really?" But her eyes would look somewhere else. I began to watch her like I watched the weather. I cataloged patterns. I listened for new sounds. The air in our house felt different. The living room had a hush now, like someone had drawn a curtain across the room. When I said her name one night and asked why she was distant, she snapped. "Don't make this about you," she said. Her words were sharp. I felt them in my ribs. I stepped back. I let her have the floor. I told myself to breathe. Then the more obvious things started. Texts I later saw when she left her phone on the table. A name that repeated, Marcus. Not every message was romantic, but the tone was private. Her son started to call Marcus friend when I was around. There were late phone calls that ended when I walked into the room. Once I found an Amazon package in the trash with something small and expensive inside. A receipt for flowers with an address across town. I kept asking myself if I was overreacting. I told myself not to jump. I tried to get ahead of fear. I called an old friend to talk. My cousin sat with me on the porch and nodded slow. "Men, we ignore things till they get big," he said. "Watch, don't rush." I took his advice. I watched. I kept notes in my head. I held my calm like armor. One evening, Kathy raised her voice. I had been joking in the kitchen, trying to lighten the mood. Her son was there. He had that hard look. "Apologize to my son right now, or we're GTTING a divorce," she screamed. Her words cut through the house like a raw wind. I froze. Her son's face was tight. His eyes were wet. The room smelled like burned toast and bleach from the sink. The fan spun overhead and everything felt unreal. She smirked at me like she had already won. The smirk didn't sit right on her face. It was cocky. It was rehearsed. My heart pounded. My hands were steady, though. I felt calm. I don't know why. Maybe shock. Maybe I had been practicing silence in my head for weeks. Maybe I was tired of being rattled. I stood up. I looked at her. I said only 3 words. "I'm walking away." Then I left the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I walked out of the kitchen and into the quiet of our front porch. I heard the screen door click. Behind me, the house hummed with tension. I watched Kathy through the window. She did not move. Her son stared at the table. In that moment, something shifted again. I felt like I had stepped onto a bridge that would not let me come back. I did not yet know how far I would walk. That night I didn't go to friends. I stood under the porch light and watched the street. The air was warm and heavy. A neighbor's TV laughed faintly. Somewhere down the block, someone slammed a car door. I breathed slow. I let the city noise hold me. When I finally went back inside, Kathy had gone to the bedroom. The house felt empty. The living room lamp left soft pools of light. On the coffee table lay a paper bag. Her son had left crumbs on the rug. I made tea to steady my hands. My fingers shook just a little. I told myself to calm down. I told myself I would not act on guesswork. The next morning I acted with small moves. I kept my face easy. I folded shirts in the closet like I always did. I mowed the lawn. I smiled at Mrs. Johnson when she waved. But I did one quiet thing. I started to collect small evidence. I called our bank for statements. I scanned paperwork we kept in a filing cabinet. I checked credit notices. I changed a password here and there. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, just precautions. I found one thing that stopped me cold. It was a folder in the home office I hadn't opened in months. It had papers with my name and Kathy. There were recent documents with a lawyer's letterhead. They were dated 3 weeks ago. The letter referenced a proposed separation agreement. It spoke of asset division and of temporary custody for her son. There were notes in Kathy's handwriting, notes about timing and pressure. A sticky note read, "Make him apologize, get signed." That note felt heavy in my palm. My chest tightened. I sat down. My hands were cold. The house sounded loud all at once. I thought about all the small things again. The perfume, the late nights, the receipts. I felt foolish and then furious. I felt used. The idea that she had set a trap, that she had rehearsed breaking us apart to win the house or the bank account, cut deeper than any private betrayal. When I opened her phone later that day, not to invade but because I needed clarity, I found a string of messages that confirmed my worst fear. Kathy had been messaging a local attorney. She had been mapping out a timeline. She had talked about making a move and using the son as leverage. She had written, "He'll give in. He always does." There were photos of signed pages. There was even a picture of a check stub that suggested she had been talking about money changes behind my back. My breath came in shallow pools. I thought of all the times I had trusted her with everything. I thought of my father telling me to always protect what's yours. I felt the ground drop. I felt the old anger rise like a tide. My hands trembled. I put the phone down. I pressed it face down on the table. For a moment I wanted to call her out. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the papers in the trash. But I did not. I breathed. I made coffee. I sat in my car and drove slow to clear my head. The dashboard clock ticked. I counted my breaths. Each breath made my plan firmer. I would not be a reaction. I would not be bait. I would be quiet and measured. That night she came to bed and kissed my cheek. Her skin smelled different. She mumbled a soft good night. I lay awake. My heart thumped loud. My mind replayed the sticky note. Make him apologize, get signed. I pictured the lawyer's letterhead. I pictured her smirk. I thought about her son. He was a boy still in many ways. He was being used. He was being coached to think I was the enemy. I felt a sharp ache for him. I had loved him like my own. I had worked nights and taken him to practice and carried him on my shoulders. The idea that someone would weaponize a child made my hands clench. That night I made a choice. I would gather every paper, every text, every receipt. I would build a quiet record. I would protect what was mine and I would expose what she had planned. I went back to the office. I copied letters. I saved screenshots. I printed the sticky note. I labeled everything. In the pale glow of the lamp with only the sound of the fan, I felt the last of my disbelief fall away. By midnight the folders were thick. I stacked them like bricks. My chest felt hollow and heavy. The house was asleep. The fan hummed. Somewhere in the dark, someone laughed on the TV. My hands smelled faintly of paper and ink. I understood then that nothing would be the same. That night I realized everything was about to change. I also knew that change would not be noisy. It would be surgical. I do not like yelling. I do not like drama. I like quiet. I like order. Once I saw the papers, the plan took shape like clear water. I would act slow. I would act smart. I would use the law and the truth. I would never stoop to tricks. I would simply protect my life. First I secured things, not to punish her, to shield my family and myself. I called our financial advisor. I made an appointment under the pretense of retirement planning. I told him I felt unsettled. He was a patient man. He reviewed our accounts. We moved investments into accounts that required signatures. We updated beneficiaries. We changed passwords. I did these things quietly. No alarms. No drama. I told myself these were steps any careful man would take. I also started to document more. I saved messages. I recorded dates of the late nights. I wrote down times I had been lied to. I asked a close friend from church to sit with me and listen. Marcus, the friend, offered to be a witness if needed. He didn't ask questions. He just listened and brought me coffee. My cousin Tony checked in sometimes and nodded without judgment. You need people who will hold your story when you can't speak it loud. At home, I put on a face. I came to dinners. I sat at the table. I asked about her day. I smiled. "You good?" I would say. She answered like a performer. Her laugh was tight. She hugged me sometimes. I hugged her back. I acted like nothing was happening. That was the hardest part, to smile while your hands are burning with truth. I began to find small ways to peel away the mask she wore. I talked to her son differently. I spent longer in the car with him after school. I asked about his friends and his classes. I took him to the clinic when he complained about his knee. I drove him to his job one afternoon and listened to his music. He was quiet at first. He seemed to test me with small coldness. Slowly, he softened. One night he sat on the porch steps and told me he felt confused. "People keep telling me stuff," he said. "I don't know who to believe." I listened. I told him nothing but truth. He began to double-think what he had been coached to believe. Financially, I did more than change passwords. I made a tidy paper trail that could not be twisted. I paid bills from different accounts. I pulled out statements that showed steady support. I had receipts from years of taking care of the home. I documented charitable donations we had made together. I wanted everything in order in case we needed lawyers to understand the real picture. I did not do this for spite. I did it because fairness matters. At night I ran the plan through my head. The house lay dark, the fan whirred. My files were stacked on the home office desk like a small fortress. I would not rush into the open. I would let the truth rise. I would let evidence speak while I stood calm. People respect a man who can remain composed with proof. There was a private war inside me. I loved Kathy once. I loved her still in a stubborn place. That love made it harder. It also made me wiser. I knew that revenge was not about cruelty. It was about reclaiming dignity. It was about not letting a lie steal a lifetime. I practiced breathing when anger came. I did not want to become what I despised. I also made a move to protect our property. I arranged for a meeting with our mortgage lawyer to clarify title rights. I set up a lockbox for important documents. I talked to a trusted family friend who had seen divorce in the family and asked him what to watch for. He told me simple things. Keep records, keep calm, and never sign anything in anger. The quiet plan had another part. I needed witnesses who could testify to the truth of what life had looked like for years. I asked Mrs. Johnson from next door if she remembered when the kids played and we did barbecues, and she smiled and said yes. I asked the pastor if he could recall our long history at the church. He nodded. I was building a story of my life from facts, not feelings. While all this grew, Kathy bragged to people. She told her friends she had made a move. She told her sister the timeline she had planned. The smirk surfaced often in public now. The neighborhood began to murmur. People took sides quietly. I did not confront those whispers. I kept doing my work. On the third day after I walked away, the move I expected happened. Kathy's arrogance slipped. Her son's face crumpled in private. The small fortress of documents was ready. I had the lawyer letters, the receipts, the hospital records of nights I had stayed with family when she was absent. I had the text messages that proved intent. I had witnesses. I had my own steady breath. The morning I chose to confront her, I did not rush. I put on my dark fitted t-shirt. I brushed my beard. I walked into the house with the same slow calm I used to walk into a gym. The sun poured through the blinds like a spotlight. I felt different. I felt collected. I was not the same man who had stood shocked in the kitchen. I had become a man who knew how to protect what mattered. The day I chose to confront her, I was no longer the same man. I picked the night carefully. It wasn't a holiday or a show. It was a regular Thursday. I wanted ordinary light. I wanted no audience. We sat at the kitchen table. The fan hummed low. The table still had the faint smell of coffee. Her son was at the far end with headphones around his neck. He looked tired. I poured coffee and watched her hands. They trembled slightly when she reached for the sugar. I kept my voice steady. "Kathy," I said, "we need to talk." She looked up, tired sweet at first. Then the practiced smirk crept back. She thought she could steer this like the other nights. "About what?" she asked. Her voice had a thin edge. I placed a folder on the table. The stack of papers made a sound like a small thunder when they hit the wood. I didn't shout. I didn't slam. I slid the folder across to her. "Read it," I said. She opened it like she was already sure of what it would say. The first page was the lawyer's letter. Next were screenshots of her messages, the sticky note, the receipts. Then pages of bank statements showing the money trail. I had circled items quietly with a pen. I had highlighted the page where she wrote, "He'll give in." The air felt tight. Her face changed first in a slow collapse. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened and closed like she was underwater. Her son's headphones fell to the table. He looked up. He saw the papers too. The color left his face. For a moment he looked like a boy again, not an actor in a plan. "Kevin," she started, her voice broke. The smirk was gone. She looked vulnerable in a way that made me ache. She reached for a page, her hands shook. "You planned this?" I asked. My voice was calm, but there was a steel edge. "You used our son. You sold pieces of our life before you told me." Tears came sudden and raw. "No, Kevin, no." She said it so fast it came out like a prayer. "It wasn't like that." She stopped. She had no script left. Her son stood up. He looked at her with hurt that was sharp and small. "Why did you do that, Mom?" he whispered. Why would you do that to him? He pointed at me. I felt like my ribs opened and closed. Kathy reached for him, but he stepped back. The house felt like a stage where the curtain had fallen. People in our neighborhood who had known us looked different now. The pastor's face at church would be different now. The cousins who had eaten at our table would see this night replayed in their minds. She lashed out with words small and frantic. "You don't understand finances," she said. "You think you own everything, you never listen. I was trying to protect me, I was trying to plan." It came out messy. It had no shape. I answered with facts. I read statements. I showed receipts that proved my steady support. I showed blank spaces where she had planned to take advantage. I did not shout. I did not indulge blame. I spoke only the truth I had gathered. Each paper was a nail in a coffin of lies. She tried to explain some things away. Her voice kept slipping into new versions of the story. She said she was scared. She said she was planning for their future. She said I would not understand because I was too proud. At one point she slumped in her chair. She sobbed like someone who had been forced to face themselves. That sound hit deeper than anger. I felt for a second the old love, the tired, human love that made us stay together in the first place. But that love did not make me blind. I had the paper trail now. Her son came to me later that night and spoke softly. "Dad," he said, and for a second he looked older than his years. I was scared. "I know," I said. I put my hand on his shoulder. He leaned in. He cried a little and then wiped his face. "I didn't want to see you go," he said. Kathy watched them. Her face had a new, raw fear. She realized how small her theater of manipulation had become in front of the facts. People who plan usually expect one outcome. They rarely expect the dignity of the other person to be stronger than the plot. When it all ended, she knew she had already lost more than she had planned for. She lost trust. She lost the illusion of control. She lost standing in the house and in the neighborhood. The words she had thrown at me in the kitchen hung in the air. "Apologize or we're getting a divorce." She had used the threat like a weapon. Now the weapon was blunt. I looked at her with a calm I had not felt since the porch. "You had a choice," I said. "You chose." She did not answer. Her son's face had the exhaustion of someone who had been forced to grow up. I felt pity, I felt sorrow, I felt relief. She knew she had already lost. What followed was not a movie scene. It was paperwork, small humiliations, and the slow, quiet work of unwinding a lie. Kathy tried to rally friends. She posted on social media half-truths. A few people took her side, but the paper trail was precise and the witnesses were steady. We went to mediation. I did not want spectacle, I wanted fairness. The mediator read the documents. He asked simple questions. He asked why she had notes about timing and pressure. He asked why her story changed when shown the receipts. Her answers were thin. In court, the truth matters. Facts do. The judge reviewed our finances. The evidence I had collected showed a plan to leverage our child and our property. The judge asked questions that mattered. Who paid the mortgage? Who paid for the repairs? Who had been the steady presence for the household? The pastor and a neighbor and a cousin spoke to years of my presence in the house. Small things like my taking the boy to practice and paying for school trips mattered. It all added up. Kathy tried to spin it as fear of poverty, as survival. She said she only wanted security. In the end, the court awarded certain protections that favored fairness. She lost access to some joint accounts for a time. The house title was clarified to protect my long-term investment that I had built before marriage. Custody stayed with me primarily, with supervised visitation until the court assessed what was best for the boy. The judge said words I still remember: "Children should not be used as currency." That sentence landed like a hammer. After the hearing, the neighborhood spoke softly. People I had known for years clapped me on the shoulder at the corner store. Some looked ashamed for not noticing. Some avoided me. Gossip is a street that never sleeps, but many people brought food and sat with me in the yard. They offered quiet counsel. The pastor visited and put his hand on my shoulder. "You did right," he said. Kathy's life unraveled in ways she hadn't planned. She lost financial ease. She lost reputation. She lost the status that comes from being seen as the steady mother. Her son, who had been used as a shield, began to see reality. He apologized once later when the house felt less sharp. He told me he was sorry for believing pressure and for acting like he had been coached. Those words came late, but they came. They mattered. I did not want to revel in her loss. That would have been petty. I wanted to reclaim my life. I wanted to keep the child safe. I wanted to walk out with dignity. So I cleaned the house after the judge's order. I fixed the porch light. I painted the fence. I took the boy to get a haircut and we laughed over something silly on the drive home. I started running again at dawn. The city felt different, but it felt honest. One night I drove out of the city and watched the sunrise over a highway. The sky was pale gold. I felt something heavy lift. The storm of the last month had stripped many things away. It had also revealed what mattered. I had lost a woman I had loved and found peace in the process. I had protected a life that needed steadiness. Kathy came by months later. She was smaller in a way. Her eyes had lines I hadn't seen before. She asked for help with the boys' school fees. She asked for forgiveness. She said she had been wrong. She said she had been selfish. I listened. I gave practical help where I could. I set boundaries. She begged in ways that stung. I forgave her in ways that did not erase consequences. The community watched. Some said I was cold. Others said I was measured. I don't know which is truer. I only know I did what I had to do. I chose truth over theater. I chose the safety of the child over the noise of headlines. I chose to walk away from a life built on a lie. There is a moment when you reclaim yourself that feels like dawn. It is not loud, it is not flashy, it is quiet and steady. I felt that dawn. I could breathe. I could stand tall again. I had my house in order. I had a boy who trusted me. I had the quiet respect of people who mattered. That was enough. She lost much. I gained back what mattered most. If betrayal taught me anything, it's this: calm is not weakness. Calm is strategy. I walked away once with 3 words. I walked back with proof and with purpose. I did not break the way someone expected. I rebuilt. If you are listening and you feel your world tilt, do this first. Breathe. Document. Call a friend who will hold you steady. Find witnesses. Protect the child. Move with dignity. Don't perform anger. Let truth do the heavy lifting. A man in our community once told me, real strength is quiet. It holds things steady so life can breathe. I learned that strength the hard way. I lost a partner to her choices. I kept my peace. I kept my home. I kept my heart open enough to forgive where it counted and wise enough to set boundaries where it mattered. If you are going through this now, know this: you can be calm and you can be fierce. You can protect what's yours without losing your soul. That's how I walked away and then walked back into my life. The porch light still comes on at night. The fan still hums. The city still breathes. And so do I.